There are plenty of unique weapons in Elden Ring. How can you tell a weapon is unique, you might ask? Well, it certainly is not by having a unique moveset, as many unique weapons have the common moveset of its weapon type. Nor is it because unique weapons have a unique weapon art, as there are many unique weapons with normal weapon arts that you can get from Ashes of War. No, unique weapons are simply the ones that are upgraded with somber smithing stones to a maximum of plus 10 instead of the regular smithing stones to plus 25. Oh, and there's about a 76.2% chance you can guess a weapon is unique by looking at its design alone. Fashion certainly has to be taken into account. I mean, there are people beating Elden Ring at rune level 1, so what's wrong with using a garbage weapon that looks cool? However, I do think that many of the unique weapons feel like wasted potential because their usages are just too niche and don't feel powerful enough. Loretta's War Sickle was one such weapon, and we're going to see today how a patch note has redeemed it, making it properly fill its niche. The fashion of Loretta's War Sickle is irreplaceable, and I got a request on how to optimize this weapon for a build. If you've ever watched my Halberd breakdown, you will know a bit of what's coming next. This weapon was why my Halberd breakdown had a fun little activity where you could search for the War Sickle in the dumpster. Let's start with some introductions for the start of today's show. Usually, Sickle and Shottle type weapons have a 50% shield pierce at a cost of slightly lower attack. But guess what? Loretta's doesn't have the 50% shield pierce, yet has lower than average attack if you factor in the fact that it has magic attack as well. Do remember that having split damage types means you go through defense twice, and is thus weaker than a single damage type with the same amount of attack. So, this weapon has relatively less attack than the other halberds, but not the bonus of the shield pierce for sickles. Next, the weapon scales to 3 stats, but it scales best to dexterity. If you take a look at its requirements, dexterity is the lowest requirement. You must invest 20 points into strength and intelligence, despite those stats having a weaker scaling. It does make unique weapons like the sickle scale well when you hit very endgame though, but by then, there is a whole different comparison to be drawn. Finally, Loretta's slash is not a unique Ash of War in terms of animation at least. For some reason, the Loretta's slash on Loretta's War Sickle has a different damage calculation from the one you get from the Ashes of War. You would think that not having the same scaling would make the weapon art stronger, but not always. It actually makes the weapon art of the War Sickle weaker than its counterpart for using the Ash of War on intelligence builds. For this unique version, you want to maximize AR instead of investing into intelligence like the regular version. But hey, at least the damage difference on an intelligence build is super small now. It used to be huge. After I made my Halberd video, FromSoft buffed this weapon in patch 1.07. So if you're going for an intelligence build, this sickle only loses out a bit of damage. On the other hand, when you do optimize your stats for the weapon, its Ash actually deals more damage than a magic-infused glaive now. An additional note, if you want the exact same normal attack moveset on your Halberd as the War Sickle, we can also compare it to the magic-infused Guardian Sword Spear, which actually has the same AR as the magic glaive in my example. So, for players who simply love the design of this weapon, how do you optimize it? Before we begin though, I do want to point out that the Loretta's War Sickle is the second longest halberd. Combined with its potential for superior Ash of War damage, Loretta War Sickle users now have a lifeline to cling onto. First up, I have demonstrated that Loretta's War Sickle does not perform exceptionally well on intelligence builds. If you want the exact same moveset as Loretta's War Sickle and not the regular halberd moveset, the Guardian Sword Spear on Magic Infusion is still better. Therefore, let's give up on investing in intelligence and look at some other options. Optimizing for the AR of the Loretta's War Sickle, we will end up with a build with 45 strength, 55 dexterity, and 20 intelligence. Remember, maximizing this weapon's attack also maximizes its weapon art's damage. 45 strength and 55 dexterity is an awkward stat investment though. This corresponds closest to quality infused weapons, which is a poor infusion at this stat range. The other option is to look at other unique weapons that scale well to both strength and dexterity. And since Loretta's Sickle is a halberd, let's look at other halberds that meet the requirement, because I do think that for PvE especially, power stancing halberds is probably the best way to go, since having a different non-catalyst weapon type on your offhand is more effective in PvP. The two options that fit our criteria are the Commander's Standard and the Dragon Halberd. I personally recommend the Commander's Standard, as it also has a very long reach, and you can easily two-hand the weapon once in a while for a good buff. Its unique weapon art, Rallying Standard, gives you and your allies a 20% damage buff and 20% negation buff in PvE. This buff is greatly nerfed in PvP though. The other option is to shift some of our strength to dexterity. Remember, Loretta scales best to dexterity. Using the same level of investment, we will reach 20 strength, 80 dexterity, and 20 intelligence. You will see a small drop in Loretta's attack, but it is not a significant amount, only coming in at a 2.1% reduction in attack rating. However, shifting your strength investment to dexterity allows us to run the Keen Infusion on our offhand halberd, which is a lot better than Quality Infusion if you're not running nearly maxed out characters. This allows us to run the Guardian Sword Spear, a weapon that scales extremely well to dexterity. It gives you an absurd amount of attack rating on your offhand, a lot more than the Commander Standard. Remember, the Loretta's Sickle here has higher attack only because it is a split damage type weapon. Its actual damage will be closer to the Militia Shato, which goes to show just how far ahead the Keen Guardian Sword Spear is in terms of raw attack. The advantage of going this route is that you can infuse your Guardian Sword Spear with ranged dexterity scaling Ashes of War, such as Thunderbolt or Beast's Roar, to help you deal with enemies at a range, while not investing into intelligence or faith for spells or incantations. And yet, your Loretta Slash's damage will still scale well, because remember, the Loretta Slash on the Sickle scales to our attack rating, and we are not forced to invest in intelligence. So yeah, there we go. If you want to use Loretta's Slash while not getting stuck to an intelligence build and prefer a strength dexterity or dexterity focus setup, this is its niche. Not only will you have access to an enhanced version of the Loretta's Slash, you will also be pairing it with another powerful offhand halberd quite optimally. Here is a build example for the quality version at level 150. The FP is optimized so that you can do 1 times Rallying Standard plus 4 times Loretta's Slash, or 2 times Rallying plus 2 times Loretta's Slash. The talisman choices are fairly standard picks for meeting requirements and also buffing damage. I'm running Millicent because it works well with power stance weapons, as both hits counts towards its damage buff. As for the dexterity version, I pushed the FP up to 91 for 9 casts of Thunderbolt if needed. Otherwise, you can take a point out from Mind and put it into Vigor. Obviously, the fashion for these builds is up to you. Like and subscribe. If you want to support my work, please consider buying my fantasy novel or donating to my Patreon down below. With a book purchase, you can also request a topic from me. Krite, signing out.